Day of July 2015. This is the Ochelli Effect, as that rather aggressive bumper tells you. Epic, dynamic, cinematic, whatever it is you want to describe it as. I am your host, Chuck Ochelli, here on UCY.TV radio. Want to thank you for tuning in. Whether you decided to utilize an application via your fondle slab of choice, or you're finding us further on down the line, say on YouTube or something else like that, I do say go ahead and go to ucy.tv/TOE, and there you will find many archived shows as well as a YouTube playlist, the various other methods and streams by which you can listen to the network, other shows, links to them via the tabs up top, a news feed, lots of interesting stuff at ucy.tv. So, what am I going to do tonight on this alleged Independence Day? By the way, happy alleged Independence Day to all of you. It is that time of year again. Generally speaking, I would have, if I were close enough to my, well, for the most part throughout my lifetime, my home, which was in New Jersey on the Jersey Shore, if I was there, I would be making my annual minimal pilgrimage to my father's final resting site. And that is not going to happen this year, obviously. So, what has been going on? Well, hey, you know what? I actually totally missed all news feeds yesterday and all that good stuff. I mean, I left off somewhere around the guy with the toupee shooting off his mouth about something or other, and more complaints about flags and, you know, racial divide and, oh, be very, very afraid on the 4th of July holiday because there's terrorist boogeymen under your bed everywhere you go. But anyway, I digress. What happened to me yesterday, though, is I had to go to the emergency room, and that's because I had some rather peculiar problems, and at this point I might as well be a one-armed bandit because, well, you know, because I have very little use of my right arm right now, and under rather strange circumstances, so thinking that it might be something worse, we went to the emergency room, and now I'm kind of medicated because it probably has to do with the residual effect of the almighty broken neck. So there we go. So, yes, I am. You know, it's funny. I get the strangest Skype messages while I'm on while I'm on the air sometimes. So let me go back to it because just got like three of them in a row. Yes, in case you are listening, and also on my Skype list at the very same time, this is a live show. I generally don't do pre-records. There is a pre-recorded night on UCY on Mondays, but that wasn't intentional. It's just sort of a best of the Ochelli Effect Rewind on Monday, I believe at 6 p.m. But that's not what usually goes on. And no, I didn't have a heart attack or a stroke, although that was the fear. But I am highly medicated. So this is the wonders of needing something. Like I said, it's probably the residual effect of the formerly broken neck. So that's what it is. Yeah, well, I don't have any sort of reason for it. But anyway, moving on. Let's get on with the topic of the show. I don't want to get lost in my own silly story. But I spent a long time in the emergency room and got to deal with some of my least favorite people on the planet, doctors. And this show was already planned before that. But hey, now we're going to get into a topic that I do enjoy and that I think we're going to find entertaining with a gentleman who's never been on here before. His name is Fred James. And he's a researcher who has studied some interesting topics. Tonight we're going to focus on, believe it or not, the Babushka Lady. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Babushka Lady is, well, there is this woman who is often seen in a lot of the photographic evidence, etc., that is wearing this babushka, okay, for lack of any sort of better term. And what happens here with this lady is that she's on the grassy knoll. She appears to be photographing in some way, shape, or form the events that are going on Elm Street, during the JFK assassination, all this kind of stuff. And let's see now. More messages coming in. I'm ringing Fred James' phone right now because I didn't get the phone lines transferred. So I was hoping that I would have phone lines for the show, but apparently I had to call Mr. James myself, so that's why you guys got to put up with that ringing tone there. And I see that he's answered. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hello, Chuck. I'm here.
Right, I appreciate it, and I'm sorry we had to change up the way we were going to do this at the last minute and all that, but I was just in the midst of beginning to explain the Babushka Lady because I was going through some housekeeping procedures because I had been to the emergency room yesterday and all that. And also, I might have mildly slurred speech because I am kind of medicated at the moment. So I let the listener in on it, so they don't think I've just been drinking at the wheel. But anyway.
I hope everything went okay at the emergency room.
Well, it turns out that a much more fearful kind of thing where, it was thought among, well, I'll just be straight. Kimberly Ochelli thought that I might be having some sort of stroke or other event because of the way that my arm was being affected and all this kind of stuff. But it turns out that it's really just the wonders of an old neck injury because I had broken my neck some years ago. And it seems to be pressing down on some nerves and wreaking some havoc. So now I'm trying to get some treatment for it. And I don't usually like to go to doctors for anything, but this is one of those deals where I needed somebody else to analyze what's wrong with me. and her insistence helped with that too. But I kind of go ahead.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, it's
okay.
I just
wanted to say we want to put you in our thoughts and prayers and hope everything turns out medically for you and that there's no serious issues. And because I need you to be around here hosting this show. I do want to extend appreciation for your gracious invitation to the show. I do listen to the show from time to time, and I think it's really important for people like myself, amateur researchers, to exchange information, get new information, and know new things about the JFK assassination that we weren't privy to previously. So I appreciate that, and I also want to say Happy Independence Day.
Absolutely, yes, sir, and I do appreciate your gracious thoughts there. But it's just my attempt to because I've never written a book. I've contributed to other people's work and things like that. And it's just sort of my attempt to slice through a lot of the nonsense that I feel winds up wasting a lot of well-intentioned people's time, and unfortunately, there is no end to the stuff out there that seems to be fictitious regarding
Right.
the assassination. And, you know, in my estimation, the things that are fictitious on the conspiracy side do even more damage than the things that are fictitious on the lone nut side.
Right.
I really feel that way, and I know that's not a popular opinion, but I do. And bottom line is fiction. And honestly, I'm open minded enough that if somebody could present to me reasonable, counters to the arguments that I make regarding conspiracy, if somebody could show me a fully laid out logical chain of events and evidence that proved that Lee Harvey Oswald was your lone shooter, I do believe that I am adult enough, intellectually savvy enough to accept it. And I would be grateful, actually, to move forward and say, you know what, this is a chapter of history that we need to close in everybody's minds, and that's it. I would love to see that. In a couple of decades' time, though, no one, in my estimation, has actually done it. And that's why I stand where I stand. But even with that in mind, the people on the conspiracy side, in many cases, make it even worse by completely muddying the water, putting out there so much false information that the uneducated or uninitiated observer turns around and winds up either feeling overwhelmed by contradiction or that it's just one of these unsolvable puzzles. Forget it. There's nothing
Very
that can
true.
be done. And I don't believe in apathy. I can't stand it. I would much rather, work very hard, come to a good conclusion, and say, look, this is, the penultimate bit of evidence, and this is the most well founded story possible. And let's just accept it and move on. Because there are many other issues in the world that I would like to solve as well. And not just criminal acts, but I mean many, many things that go on. And,
Right. I do.
yeah.
I agree with that totally. And the way you presented that, I agree with. The information, a lot of information that we're getting, and it does come from both sides. And it's harmful to whatever the truth is. If there's a lot of noise that people add to this investigation. And I just wanted to also say, you and I are on different sides of the aisle. However, you have a myth series that you've been doing, and the success in that series is you get people from both sides of the aisle who can come together and dispel myths. So we do have some common goals, and I agree with that the statement you made that if there was a explanation that totally lays everything out, that you could follow that explanation. Now, I come at it from another angle, of course. I think there's a pretty good explanation as to what actually occurred, and I think it's pretty reasonable. Of course, you don't disagree with me, and a lot of the listeners right now are not going to agree with me. But in terms of your statement of there being a lot of misinformation, muddying the waters, and these type of false stories, false witnesses, I mean, this case is so convoluted with those type of things. It's good that we can come together, even though we disagree, to dispel some of that stuff. And then, when we can move some of that stuff to the side, then we might be able to come closer at maybe not necessarily agreement, but a little bit closer to the truth as to what happened.
Right, and just as a final word, yes, you do stand on the opposite side of the aisle regarding the most likely scenario being a conspiracy versus the lone shooter scenario. I mean, right? That's an accurate statement to make.
Yeah, I think it was Oswald.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't always have this belief. I transitioned over a certain period. If you want me to talk about that, I can tell you how I came to this view. It'll take a minute. if you're interested.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, we have plenty of time to get into the Babushka Lady, which is fascinating because if we present the contrast here between how we see the case and then come together and say, listen, regardless of our interpretations, there is a reasonable certainty with which you can remove salacious evidence, okay? Um,
Exactly.
and that helps us all because when I first started talking about this, I mean, initially when I went into studying the case myself, I was on the opposite island where I stand now. Okay, I wanted to disprove all of the conspiracy theories, every
Right.
last one of them, to put it to rest because I felt as though it was just really a shamefully misrepresented thing. And then I started to study, and I don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah,
uh,
is that rare for one to cross from the lone gunman side to the conspiracy side? I think it's more common the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Unless you're, gee, you know what? You're exactly right. I think it's probably more rare what I did. A lot of guys do wind up going through the conspiracy-based literature and work, and they find so much fictitious nonsense that baby goes out with the bathwater. And honestly, I don't blame them so much because I have always said that the only ones among us who wish to advocate for a conspiracy in this case, uh, the only ones of us that are truly going to police that as far as making sure that there's really good, well-founded information going out is ourselves. And unfortunately, I've never really been heard on that subject until I started doing my own little myth series, and I get private contacts and public contacts alike that are extremely happy that I did that. Plus, lots of flack. But the flack has more come from the more extreme, like fringe conspiracy guys than anything, to be
I know
honest.
exactly who you're. I can just run through names in my mind. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Well, right. And you know what? I don't want to devolve into that discussion because otherwise we'll have to rename this episode Myths 5. And we really did want to focus on the Babushka Lady, but, go ahead and first tell us how it is you came from the conspiracy side to the lone nut side. And I'm very sure of one thing before you even tell this story is that it's going to be loaded with sound logic. I may disagree with your interpretation, but I have a funny feeling that there's going to be some very serious sound logic in how you present this.
Well, the Babushka Lady does tie into it somewhat. I had a certain belief about the Babushka Lady, which even before I started to believe that there was no conspiracy, I was starting to already dismiss Beverly Oliver's allegations of being the Babushka Lady. I just wasn't able to hold on to that belief anymore. But I did believe her at a particular time. But what
Mm.
got me to transfer all the way over from one side to the next? I had gone to Dallas a couple of times. The first time in 2003. Okay, at that particular time, I was much of a observer, not really a researcher. I did believe in the conspiracy at that point. I saw a few documentaries, read a book or two, and saw a few things. Convinced there's a conspiracy, of course.
Mm.
But I wasn't really deep into the research. But then I went back in 2013 for the 50th anniversary. And by this point, I'm a little bit more information, pretty solid in the research somewhat, a few more books read, more commission, a little bit more commission read. However, I attended a symposium, and just when you go to some of the conspiracy gatherings, there might be like 3 or 4 conspiracy theories within that gathering. However, all the participants, somehow they seem to get along. They have no problems with each other's stories. I mean, they're contradicting each other, and that kind of rubbed me a little bit wrong.
Mm.
And then a little bit after that, I was just thinking about the upper anatomy of a human being, because I've always learned, like way back since the '80s when I first got interested that there's no way the bullet can hit Kennedy where it did in the back, and then go upward to exit his neck. And then so I'm looking at considering the human anatomy, and if you look at the average person from the side, you can see that the upper back is considerably higher than the front of the lower neck. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, wow, I mean, the trajectory could be right. But of course, you have the Gerald Ford allegation where the back wound is moved downward or upward or whatever. But from there, I mean, I'm still believing that there's likely a conspiracy, pretty strong in it. I get back from Dallas, and then I start to see where, the forums, people are on Facebook and different forums. I joined a few of them, and for a while, I'm arguing, hey, this is a conspiracy, and presenting evidence and these type of things. But there's always some things. I don't know if this is the same with other people. I would imagine most intelligent people will have certain issues with certain allegations, even though they believe them. They think like, well, I believe this, but I have a problem with this aspect of it. If I can give an example of that, even today, right now, I don't think the backyard photos are altered. I think they're genuine, but I still can't understand how, if you look at Oswald's fingers on the paper, it just doesn't look right to me. I don't think there's anything wrong. I just think that there's some anomaly that it just doesn't look right. The shadows aren't right on the paper in my mind, but that's just one thing that bothered me. When I was on the conspiracy side, the thing that bothered me was when you watch the Zapruder film, you see the side of Kennedy's head open up on the film.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to Dallas the first time, I thought there was probably a Knoll shooter. I've since changed my mind on that, of course. But it bothered me that how would there be a Knoll shooter from that side when the side of his head is opening up from the position of where the shooter would be? I mean, it didn't make sense to me. So then, when I'm thinking about this, I'm in Dealey Plaza looking around like the shot had to come from the other side in order to make an exit wound on the right side of his head. So I'm looking at places for a shooter on the left side of Kennedy. There's like that middle pergola area where there's like a long bush that lines the whole cement facade there. I'm looking there and looking at, well, there could have been a shooter here, there could have been a shooter here, and I'm just trying to make it work in my mind as to why his head opened up on the side. And the only reason why I bring this up is because I think most reasonable people, even if you believe a certain thing, there's going to be something in that thing that should bother you. And there's a lot of them in the some of the conspiracy allegations, things that just bothered me, and they just started to add up. And then I'm going to mention a few names at this point, excuse me, because when I started to get into these forums and see people debating and the kind of research they were doing, I realized I didn't know anything. So I needed to start doing what they were doing and start digging up some stuff and start getting information. And I started to see, Chris, I hope I don't mispronounce your last name, Chris Simondet. I don't know which one it is. But I saw him and I saw Dennis Morissette. They were debating someone on the mysterious deaths. And to that point, I'm thinking that the London Times actuary and these things are all credible. The Penn Jones allegations of the mysterious death. I mean, I'm believing it all, but now I'm seeing people like the two gentlemen I just mentioned. They're showing evidence of some of these people's deaths, and they were perfectly reasonable, natural deaths. And some of them were, as far as the conspiracy allegations were misrepresented. That some of the time frames were off. When I started to see some of this and started to see like the death certificates and the newspaper clippings and whatnot, I was thinking like, wow, I mean, some of this stuff is just like a huge sham. I mean, it's like a huge hoax. And then, I just get a little bit further along. The thing that really changed me as far as my thinking about whether or not Oswald was a lone assassin was when I first understood the single bullet. Prior to understanding it, I thought it was a bunch of hogwash, just like anybody else. I mean, how can a bullet do all these things and come out relatively undamaged? How were 7 wounds caused? The bullet was found under suspicious circumstances, just laying on the floor and someone picked it up. I thought all these things were, of course, strange until I understood the scientific and ballistic evidence involving the bullet. You probably will disagree, but I think we can discuss that at some point later. Maybe today, if there's time left after we're done. But
oh yeah, either we can do it, that way, or to be honest with you, I'd be more than happy to have you on, during that debate that I want to do, which I'm very much hoping that Steve Rowe will join me for.
I would love to participate as far as I feel fairly versed in the single bullet theory. I don't too much debate in a lot of other areas that I don't feel comfortable in, but that's when I would feel that I could hold my own, the single bullet theory.
Oh, yeah, well, and I'll tell you, let me just address a couple of the things you said, because I understand where you have a lot of problems because there's been so much misrepresentation. That's the thing. That's what bothers me, is that somebody like me takes the time to interview the witnesses, to examine the x-rays, to seek the help of experts, to educate myself on many things, including the x-rays, including film, including photography, including documentation, including the agency speak, the cryptonyms, all of these things that I take the time to search for legitimate problems, okay, when examining this. And these other people seize upon some nonsense that somebody, spat out 30 years after they testified to the contrary, okay?
Right.
And they make it into a huge thing. Now, when it comes to, let's just, like I said, we'll go like point by point really quickly. The backyard photographs, I know they're legitimate. Why do I know that they're legitimate? Because I've actually seen more than one person photographed on that exact location, okay, on the right day of the year at the right time of day. And guess what? That's how those shadows fall. Okay?
Did you take it with the Imperial Reflex? I think that was the camera.
One was taken with a similar camera to the Imperial Reflex, but others have been taken with dissimilar cameras, and the shadow effect is as a result of the positioning of the sun. It's just that simple. You get similar shadows if you take a black and white photograph and you have a decent amount of contrast, not an overabundance of it. You will get the same results. And one of them was even there the day that those stairs were being torn out, and wound up taking one of those stairs home as a souvenir from the refuse bucket. Okay, I'm just explaining that I've physically seen it reproduced. So
yeah,
I
guess any camera you use, you're still going to get the same shadows.
Mm-hmm. But I've still seen somebody go out of their way to try and use the same alleged camera, and the results are the same anyway. Okay,
right.
So I feel as though if your shadows are the argument with Oswald, you're done. It's a strange photograph. I admit that. It's an odd thing that came together under odd circumstances. Marina Oswald's testimony about these photographs is inconsistent.
Right.
But guess what? It can be reproduced. It's not a wholesale forgery. End of story.
I think for anyone listening who, I think you can look at the analysis done by the Dartmouth professor. His name is Hani Farad, or Farad Hani.
Yeah, Hani Farid, the Dartmouth professor who did a digital analysis of it. And
I think he explained that very well.
Yeah, because he built a 3D model based on the conditions that would have existed and shows the same thing that these other people did with a camera. I what else can I say? I don't want to agree with him. Boy, it would make it a whole lot more interesting and easy for me to explain other things if that photograph was a fake. But it's not, in my estimation. Now, onto the trajectory and the magic bullet, which I will still call the magic bullet. but here's why it's magic, and here's where I get a lot of hate from my friends who agree with me that there is a conspiracy. It's magic in the way that they have represented it. They have completely misrepresented what it was. And that has been going on ever since I came anywhere near this case, which was somewhere in the range of the 25th anniversary. Unfortunately, if you're going to make a poor argument, all right, your conclusion is going to fall apart. It is, now prepare yourself for this one, because I'm telling you, I've angered many a person with this. It is physically, theoretically possible to put that bullet through Kennedy and into Connally. I have questions about whether CE 399 is the bullet.
Right.
Okay. I have legitimate questions. I feel the chain of custody is bad. Okay. The accounts of where it came from seem off. All right. So the explanation about the evidence and the way it was collected, I have questions about that bullet.
I'll be the first to say that I still have reservations about how the investigation was conducted, and I'm still critical of the official investigation where I believe it's warranted, and I do think they had some missteps in the chain of custody with some of the evidence, and I can understand why anyone would have a problem and would seize that particular area of the investigation to try to push a conspiracy because they did screw up a lot
right.
in terms of the chain of custody of that particular evidence. Not all of it.
Not all of it. But
399, the chain of custody of that was terrible.
Right, and a whole lot of other things connected to that bullet are problematic. Okay, Vincent Gwynn's examination through neutron activation analysis is at best questionable. Bullet lead analysis, which was one of the other things that they tried to use, turns out to be a statistical problem and a nightmare and a half. It is not so conclusive, okay, because you're looking
at... It's not, but there has been a subsequent analysis done that goes a step beyond the neutron activation. And I think I agree with the Ron Sturtevant analysis. I mean, they pretty much shown that in order for there to be anything beyond the single bullet, you'd have to have another carcanal being fired. The lead that they have, I think and I believe the results that they came up with, that all the lead had to have come from a certain batch and will also have to be from the Western Cartridge Company. This all means that the lead had to originate from a carcanal. Now, you can posit a second carcanal, but that's the only way you can go. Unless you just dispel the analysis that they did, but I believe that analysis.
I tend to believe that it's rather questionable because Stu Wexler co-authored a piece about this that when I started to look into the nuts and bolts of what it is they had established, and based on some of the information that could be gathered from the industry, it seems to me, again, because of its content, it's at the very least extremely questionable. And in my opinion, no good. All right, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just trying to go through what it is that I'm using and thinking about regarding this. And I don't just take Stu Wexler and, God, I'm sorry, I can't remember the other guy's name who co-authored the study with him, but it was a pretty extensive study basically showing that, that you could get these results from multiple batches. And if their study is correct, and if the information that I was able to gather on my own is correct, then you have nothing, basically, as far as the content of the bullet. If I'm incorrect, fine.
That study came after 2004, didn't it?
When they completed it, well, okay, are you talking about did it come after the Ron study or?
Yeah, did it come after the Ron Sturdivant study?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll have to read that one.
yeah. You know what? I'll try and find it for you, and we won't kill the listeners with this one right now because this is the deep kind of stuff that you wind up having to do if you want to dismantle these things, and you wind up feeling obligated to dismantle them because so often there's a whole lot of misleading stuff out there, and I know both of us agree on that. Now,
We totally do.
yeah, I mean, but the trajectory to get the bullet through Kennedy and into Connolly is possible. I feel as though it's highly unlikely, but I do feel as though it is a physical possibility. Now,
Well, really, real briefly about the lead, it's just like the Walker bullet. You cannot conclude that that Walker bullet was fired by Oswald's rifle, but you can't exclude it either. So Wexler can't exclude the fact that the bullet could have come from the lead could have come from all from one bullet.
oh no, it's a dispositive result, is what it is. You know, it winds up saying that essentially you can't identify bullets based on the criteria that they set. That's the only thing it says. It doesn't mean that it isn't. It simply means that you can't claim a positive identification. Like, that's basically the conclusion, is that a positive identification could have been gotten from many different places to match the alleged bullet to begin with. So there's a wide range of possibilities there, but to say that with a certainty that it was from exactly the same batch from the same melt is a problem. That's really all
It's
it does.
definitely argumentative.
Yeah, no, it is definitely but the thing is, if it's scientifically sound, then it is, and that's all there is to it. That's why I've always said, if scientific evidence absolutely proves this, I'll be more than happy to accept it. But if you can tell me that the techniques are fine, wait, if you can tell me that statistically it makes sense, if you can tell me that, you literally got something that is a lock here, from a scientific standpoint, and the science hasn't been disproven in the meantime, mind you, okay, then wonderful. There's a lot of forensic techniques that didn't exist in 1963 also. So,
Right.
so that's the other interesting point here, is that as we go forward and look at these things and you look at the x-rays and so on and so forth, you have a lot of contradictory stuff. But anyway, let's move on just a little bit on the other points you made. Gerald Ford having moved the wound, well, no matter which side of the aisle you stand on here, we all know that he is literally responsible, for editing one single word here that changes the meaning. They had a bullet in his back, and Ford added back of the neck.
Okay, but
Now he may have been clarifying.
right. I was just about to say that. For what reason would he change that? Would
Well,
it be to hold a grand conspiracy together and mislead everyone, or would it be because he wanted it to match what the autopsy might look like?
that's one thing. The other thing is for now here's a very less nefarious or less precise way of looking at it, is that Gerald Ford was a congressman at the time. And very easily, in an undocumented conversation, somebody could have said to him, listen, we have this thing almost all the way wrapped up, but if we put a bullet in his back, it's going to be a problem. Now, if somebody who was a ballistics expert came and told him that and said, it's almost in the back of his neck anyway, Gerald. And if you put it in the back of his neck, that's the end of the story. And even people that don't understand the orientation of the human body will know that this is an absolute certainty, and we need to close this case for the sake of the nation. Now, Congressman Gerald Ford might have acquiesced to such a request. This is a possibility as well, without him being tied to any grand conspiracy or anything else. In fact, maybe even doing a patriotic duty. How about that for an idea? Okay.
Yeah.
Since
In
we don't
hindsight,
have,
of course, for him, he probably totally regret even changing it.
well, and I felt that way when I read the foreword to the Warren Commission a report that was, a forward by Gerald Ford. You ever seen that?
I've read that years ago. I don't recall it though.
Well, at some point, he stated in there that he knew that he was misled as a member of the Warren Commission by people in the intelligence community, and in a roundabout sort of Gerald Ford style way. Okay, he let people know that he had felt that he was misled. Not that the conclusion was incorrect, but that he was misled. So
Right.
take the what I postulated a moment ago, and now we'll change it from big official to a CIA guy who says, listen, Oswald can be tied to the Cubans and thusly tied to the Russians, and this could have started a war unless we can pin it on one guy, because if we leave any possibility open, and all you're doing is moving a bullet a couple inches and nobody will ever know, can you make sure that that's the way it comes out? Because otherwise the country could go to war again, doing a service.
That would cause a chain effect in the alteration of evidence, because once you did that, then you have to make sure that the x-rays are right, then you have to make sure the autopsy photos are right, then you have to make sure the statements of people who identified the entry wound in the back at a certain location, you have to make sure they're right. And it just creates, in all the aspects of this case where, things were supposedly altered or changed, it would create the same domino effect where other things would have to be changed.
But
that's where
the x-rays, the autopsies, and the majority of what you're talking about was never meant to be seen by the American public. So at that time,
I think that's not a good thing. I think they probably did that because of the Kennedy family. The Warren Commission weren't even able to use the autopsy photo. I think that was a huge mistake.
Yeah, but
one of my other criticisms to the Warren Commission, I do have criticisms for them, and that's one of them.
Oh, certainly, and those Rydberg drawings are ridiculous. But the thing is, again, if you're presented this, nobody's ever going to know, because nobody's ever going to see this stuff, regardless of what the reason is. And of course, it was withheld. Okay, a great deal of the information that is now in our hands was never intended to be in our hands. So there you go. Again, not a nefarious situation where you've got to alter everything in the world. I'm not one of these guys. Oh, no. Don't ever confuse me with one of these everything is fake evidence guys, please.
Okay.
Some things seem fabricated, but that's usually the reports, okay, which these guys could be in CYA mode and covering themselves left and right, and it has nothing to do with a grand conspiracy. Some people are also inept. There's good and there's bad in every profession, and some people are just inept. And the structure...
With that, I agree with you 100%. And I think that happened a lot in that investigation.
Oh,
it's a pretty big investigation to screw something up. So when you don't want to show that you screw something up, you go back and correct it.
There you go. And there's your alterations without having to be a nefarious plot.
Right.
But anyway, we've gone into a lot of general topics here, and I'm telling you, I could do this with you all day, and we could provide logical, slightly juxtaposed viewpoints here, okay? But at the end of the day, there is a lot of things to sort out, and all I wish to do, and if I accomplish nothing else in the realm of JFK research, is be part of the solution regarding getting the fiction away from the case. That's all I want. All of the fiction gone.
Tonight.
And that is certainly something that we got to keep in mind, because, again, the Babushka Lady, as she has become known and has been known for many, many years, I would say easily since the 1970s and during the time of the House Select Committee, there is a woman with a scarf over her head, which can be easily seen in the Zapruder film, which is easily seen in, the Nix film. I do believe she's pretty well present in the Much More film, and in a few other places, of course. But those would be the most easily accessible ones, right? Now, over the years, there have been investigations to find out who this woman is, especially because many people have interpreted that she might have been holding a film camera herself. Now, why is this relevant? We already have the Zapruder film. We already have the Nix, the much more of the assassination. Well, the Babushka Lady is standing only a few feet away from that car when the shots are fired. Okay? Regardless of where they came from or anything else, she might actually have a bird's eye view of the assassination and potentially a wholly different view of the grassy knoll area, which has been a point of speculation, which, just like you, I have abandoned the notion of a grassy knoll shooter that connected to anything. Okay. If there's a guy well hidden firing a rifle, I don't believe he hit the president.
Right.
That simple. But to say that there was no guy firing, well, maybe we haven't found him yet. Doubt it, but I'll allow for it.
Maybe the Babushka Lady's film would show it or not show it,
or give us a very good bird's eye view because she was much closer. But here's the problem. It's even possible that that camera that she's holding is not even a movie camera. Okay?
Well, yeah, that's one of the many problems.
But before we get into the movie, this is why she spawned so much interest. Before we get into the movie, though, here's what happens. People wanted to know who this woman was because, logically, they wanted to go find the film. They wanted to be able to get that better perspective, right? I mean, disagree with me anywhere here. So they wanted to get a hold of it. Lots of people tried to find her, including Dick Sprague, and I'm not talking about the Dick Sprague who was the HSC head until he was dismissed and then replaced by Robert Tannenbaum temporarily, and then, of course, Robert Blakey, right? But I'm talking about the guy who was a photo analyst, and you can argue with his work and look over it all you want. Lots of it is part of the historical record. He's passed away now. But at one point...
He did computers, too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Matter of fact, a bunch of his articles were published in, I think the magazine's name was, Computers and Science or something at the time. I have the articles somewhere, and because they were just a matter of, trailblazing information at the time. So I sort of, kept them for that reason. And a lot of interesting stuff came out of those articles. One of the most interesting things to me was his entire trail on the Babushka Lady and trying to track her down. And he came up with some pretty reasonable answers until I believe it was researcher Gary Shaw who found her. I'm pretty sure. I may be incorrect. If somebody wants to call me or Skype me and correct me, go right ahead.
I can give you the background on that.
Oh, please.
I think going back to Richard or Dick Sprague, I think he is I think his name is Richard. I think he coined the term Babushka Lady. He's the first person to coin that.
Right.
And then I think matter of fact, I don't know it for a fact that the earlier publicized references of the Babushka Lady was in Gary Shaw's book Cover Up back in '76,
mm-hmm.
and his book was reprinted in '92. I don't have his book. I have Jim Mars's book where the Babushka Lady is somewhat discussed.
Right.
As far as Gary Shaw, there's like a church community, and he was in Joshua, Texas, and I'm going by Beverly's book and her speeches that she's given. She was actually at a church revival in the town where Gary Shaw was.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess back in those days, as she just explained, the church parishioners would go to members' house to stay there during the revival in that town.
Mm-hmm.
And so she stayed at, it so happened that she stayed at Gary Shaw's house, her and someone else, I can't remember the name right now. But that second person, I wish I remembered the name, it's in her book, mentioned to Shaw that Beverly was at the assassination, or he asked Shaw to ask Beverly where she was during the assassination, rather. And then the whole discussion arose. And then, according to Beverly, she soon found that Gary Shaw had like a library of books, or not, I shouldn't say that. There probably wasn't a library available at that time, but he did have the Warren Commission report and some other stuff in his house that she saw, and then that's where it took off from there. This is in November of 1970 when this supposedly occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have questions about that in light of the I can't think of the word. In light of the discrepancy, the disparities, and the photo evidence that we're getting ready to talk about pretty soon,
Mm-hmm.
It makes me question that story as to how she came about coming forward with her information. I'm not sure that she was approached by someone or that it happened some different way. I'm not convinced either way. It could be the truth that she met with Gary Shaw under those circumstances and shortly after came forward. Or I'm thinking probably it could be some other way because there's a lot of questions about this and it raises questions in other areas about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that is how it is. That's how she documents the encounter and how she first came forward. Now,
well, that is odd, though. I'll tell you, Fred, why it's so odd to me is that videotapes, which were, because when I was younger, I was not always able to get to Texas, so I had friends in Texas. And they took video of some of her public appearances and even recorded things for me when she would appear on television locally. And her story always sounded more like, to me, that Shaw had sought her out and found her, which is a strange departure from the book and the discussion of this happening in 1970. It seems to me as though it had to have happened later, and I agree with you, there's discrepancies right there. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
If I might, I would like to, since we're getting into talking about Beverly Oliver, I just want to preface my comments tonight with this. What we're discussing here, we have no intentions on reflecting anyone's personal life or anything like that. All we mean to do is discuss certain claims and certain persons' things that they've said about the Kennedy assassination. Mm-hmm. I don't wish to talk about her personal life or what kind of individual she is or anything like that. Actually, I did have the occasion to see her in person twice, and when I did, I have to admit to you, I was somewhat captivated by her story and everything like that. I if you've ever seen her in person, you might see what I was talking about. Some people may not agree with me, but I think she kind of brightens up a room when she comes in. She, in my opinion, she has a warm Southern charm about her.
Mm-hmm.
She's funny, I think. And I'm from the North, so when I see a Southern charm, I can recognize it right away. When she speaks, I think she sounds very convincing for a person who doesn't have any knowledge about her claims or who would know any better about the evidence. I think she's fluid. She handles questions pretty good. And it really is no surprise to me why people believe her story. I think her presentation and her charm and those qualities kind of help people along in believing what she's saying. And
right. She comes off as a very genuine, vibrant, I would say, just sort of bright-eyed, friendly. I mean, there's lots of adjectives I could use here. When you do see her in person, I had the the job of videotaping somebody else interviewing her once, and at that time I believed her story and had nothing to say because I wasn't going to interfere with the gathering of information at all. But what was happening, when I was in her proximity, yeah, I can absolutely concur with you, sir. That's exactly right. She's very charming. I haven't seen a recent photo of her, but she was always attractive in my estimation as well. Not just in the, like the carnal sense or anything like this. I'm saying that she was just an attractive person. Do you know what I'm getting at here?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember a comment someone made not too long ago, they said that for a person that age, Beverly Oliver is really attractive, and I said, for any age, she's attractive, I think.
Yeah, all around. Generally, congeniality, politeness, sweetness, all that stuff just kind of oozed from her. I mean, so I can understand why no matter what she's saying, you want to believe it. That's for sure. And I did
Those
too for a
qualities
while.
really,
I got to be honest
yeah.
with you. I did too. Although, like I said to you, like I said to you off the air briefly, and I'll reveal this. The fact is that it never quite sat right with me, but I sort of wanted to believe her and put it aside. Okay, that's who she is, you know. And even Oliver Stone had utilized her to deal with a character and all that kind of stuff, and and I sort of bought his explanation about it. On top of that, so I mean, even into the '90s, I certainly was, all for her story. I thought it was real, uh, but things did change later. But anyway, I'm interrupting you again. Sorry.
Oh, that's quite all right. Uh, I was just going to say that ever since I saw her for the first time back in probably the early '90s or late '80s, I believed her up until a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Mm.
But because of certain things, certain exchanges I saw on Facebook and some other forums, and certain evidence that I'm aware of now that was presented in a video. There's a video. Dennis Morissette put out a video. I think everyone should take a look at this video. It's incendiary as far as in terms of the evidence that Beverly Oliver is not the Babushka Lady. If you watch that, you will see what we're talking about. It's on Facebook. It's called "Is Beverly Oliver the Babushka Lady?" And I would highly recommend anyone to watch that video. But I was going to say that that the inconsistencies in her statements, over this period that I've started not to believe her, based on the photo evidence. I mean, it just based on that, it just won't permit me to believe her anymore. And I think people will probably disagree with my opinion about it. But if anyone disagrees with what I'm saying after watching this video, or after the discussion we're having tonight, I mean, you're going to have a difficult time processing the evidence we're talking about if you believe her story is correct. Now, I don't like labeling people or anything like that. Maybe she has an explanation. Maybe she is the Babushka Lady. Maybe there's a reason she can explain why this camera, as you mentioned, does not look like a movie camera. We have to get her on the air and talk about it. Maybe she can call in, or at some point call in tonight or some other point and explain these disparities. So with that, maybe we can start getting into it. I posted like a series of pictures on the Ochelli Effect Facebook page. So hopefully anyone listening, if you want to see what we're talking about, you can reference that. Me and Chuck will describe each picture that we discuss, and you can find that picture. I should have put them in order. I did not. I should have labeled them 1, 2, 3 or ABC or something like that. I did not do that. But we'll describe the picture so when you see it, you know what we're talking about. And we'll be discussing the disparities in Beverly Oliver's statements compared to the photo evidence.
No, absolutely. And what I'm going to do also is, for the benefit of those in chat, I'm going to drop the Dennis Morissette video first, which you just referenced, because I just went and got it on YouTube. I got the link for it. And then the other thing I'm going to drop in the chat is these pictures as fast as I can, so you guys can see it there too. Okay, but yeah, definitely on the Ochelli Effect Facebook, the Facebook page for the Ochelli Effect radio show discussion group has the photographs already posted by you earlier today, so you can begin to look there as well. Okay, so here we go. And again, this is not about a reflection. It's about the disparity in what we understand here versus what we're presented with. So, and, again, this is not an attack on a particular person. This is an attempt to sort out the evidence to actually have the reality emerge. Okay, that's what it is. Fair enough.
Exactly. Yes. And since we're talking about we can start off with the camera itself. There's a picture uh, on the Facebook page, the Ochelli Effect. The one that I posted, it doesn't have. I should have posted these pictures under your advertisement, but I put them under my post instead. But the very first picture, it shows a frame from the Muchmore film, and if everybody could take a look at that frame, it's a good thing you have this archive, because those who can't access the pictures now might want to do it later, and they can just listen to it again. And people are out for the holidays and things like that too, so it's a good thing you can reference this at a later point if you want to. But the first frame that I posted on there is from the Muchmore film, and what I would like to bring your attention to is, if you look at if you look at the Babushka Lady in this photograph, you can see the camera is aimed directly at the grassy knoll area. And as you indicated before, that's what will make this thing so important. So many people believe that shots came from there. Maybe her camera would have taken an image of someone up there. But what I also like to, direct your attention to is, if you look at the bottom of her coat, you might want to go to the larger blown-up portion of this. It's like within a frame or two of this frame, or it might be the same frame, but it shows a close-up of the Babushka Lady from the Muchmore film, and you can see the bottom of her coat. You can see a dress underneath her coat. And the reason why I bring that up is because in Beverly's claims, she said she was wearing a pink and white polka dot dress. I believe, if you look at the blown up portion of this image, you can see that the Babushka Lady is not wearing such a dress. If you look at the back of her would be her right leg. You can see how it's lighter than the dress. Well, if her right leg is lighter than the dress, then certainly a white dot would appear on the dress. You would see the contrast. And there's no contrast. There's probably a 6 to 8 foot or 8 inch space where you can see the dress. If you look at Jean Hill and Mary Moorman is wearing the black coat, of course. Jean Hill's wearing the red coat, and the Babushka Lady's wearing the tannish colored coat. All three of those coats are kind of blowing with the breeze to the east. And when you look at the Babushka Lady's coat, it's exposing the dress underneath. And I don't see a green and white polka dot dress there. I think it would show if it was there. I think you would see it. Now, you can make the argument maybe the dots are higher up that you wouldn't see that, and that's fine. But this is just one more discrepancy upon the many others we're going to be discussing. And any comments about that that you want to make, Chuck? Because we can go on to the next one.
Oh, no, definitely. I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, they are consistent with the wind having swept in the direction, because we've been through many studies. I'm probably sure. Actually, I don't know this for sure, but I'm willing to bet that you've been through the studies of what the weather conditions were like that day and everything else to determine where the wind was. And it is extremely consistent with what we see here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So
okay, and also you can see that the bag on the outside of her coat. Beverly has made the claim that the bag was inside the coat, but in the Muchmore film and in the other photographs and films, you can see the strap going across the back, which you would not be able to see if the coat was over the bag. I think she made that claim because people have said that the Babushka Lady is a lot larger frame than Beverly would have been at 17 years of age at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And she suggests that the reason why she looked a little bit bigger was because the bag was underneath her coat. But I haven't seen any images of the Babushka Lady, and there are several. They vary in clarity, but none of them show the bag on the inside. They always show either the strap you can see or the bag on the outside.
No, exactly. And the other thing here is that based on a lot of different viewpoints of the Babushka Lady, it's not simply, it couldn't simply be explained away by a bag being tucked under the coat. That's been accounted for uh, in a bunch of different ways that I've seen. And I've even seen a biometric study. Okay. I was going to wait to get into this until later, but I don't know. It feels right. I
Go ahead.
have seen a biometric study. Now, let's understand what biometrics was in 2005 when I saw this done. Okay, um, you can take somebody's baby picture, okay, and you can match them to their adult face based on
Yes,
certain
I know what you're talking about now.
Ah, okay. This means that even when you see someone who, to the naked eye observer, appears to be completely different looking, I mean, people appear to morph in their old age. People appear to change appearances tremendously from their 20s to their 40s. People that are a certain look as a child, you can recognize them as an adult, but they're very different looking in a lot of cases. Some people look exactly the same their whole lives, and that's the way it is. But the truth is that there are certain markers that, when put together, not simply the spacing of the ears and the level of the ears, but certain markers in the bone structure, which create sort of a, how could I put this? Like an aggregate set of different points that are almost as good as a fingerprint. I mean, the same type of certainty that you can use in a fingerprint, you can use in these biometric studies, provided you have enough data. Now,
Okay.
modern
Yeah.
pictures and pictures of Beverly Oliver over a 30-year period are well available. They can be matched to one another. The picture she provides of herself from the 1960s, or the set of pictures that she's provided of herself in the 1960s, are consistent with the older woman we see now. They are all consistent based on this scientific testing. Okay, and I don't claim to understand it. I just claim to have witnessed it being done. Okay, guess what?
That's a very good point. I just wanted to interject real quick. Dennis did put in the video we discussed is Beverly Oliver, the Babushka Lady video. He did do a comparison between the body shape. He took a picture of Beverly from 1966 and compared it to the Babushka Lady, and you can see a difference.
Well, now you've got me definitely wanting to make sure I see this. Dennis does a lot of good work, and I've seen a lot of it. But I did not actually watch this video. You now gave me a homework assignment, Fred. Thank you, because
Well,
I
let me
want to
just.
see that. Yes.
The video is I did contribute to the production of the video to a degree.
Hmm.
The video is not it's not a video you want to go for any entertainment value unless you really want to know what's going on and the allegations and the evidence. It's not going to entertain you like that. It's not like it's a music added or anything like that. It's the bare facts. It gives you what you really need, which is all we really wanted to do. We want people to know what's going on. When you look at it, it's very clear and very understandable. So that's the approach we took with the video.
Mm.
Now, if you look further down, there's another picture which shows it's cropped from one of the Allen photos. One of the photographers, William Allen, who was present down there with a black and white camera. He took a couple of pictures. Some of them include the Babushka Lady, and some include other people, Charles Brim and his son, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
He took a very sharp image that Dennis was able to obtain. There has been other versions of this image available throughout the years, but this one Dennis got, I think he got it from the 6th floor. Very clean, very sharp. I cropped it, but there's another version where you can see the whole thing, so you know there's nothing fishy going on. But I did crop it just to point out a couple of things. It's the one that shows pretty much her waist down, the bag all the way down to the ground. I don't know if you see that there. You could probably still see it in the regular version that's uncropped. But if you look at it, if you look at the bottom of her dress, you can again see the bottom of her coat again, you can see a little portion of the dress she was wearing underneath, and it's a dark colored. In contrast to the coat is dark. You don't see any polka dots there, and that's something that maybe Beverly could explain to us why those two images we discussed are not showing any polka dots. Another
Right, and
detail
this,
about the
and just for the clarification of the listener, the reason is she has repeatedly described what she was wearing, and I mean that polka dot dress is consistent, constantly, in that. Also, let's not forget. Are we going to get into the wig and everything else tonight, or?
Yeah, we can a little bit. I can see we don't have a whole lot of time left. I don't know where that hour went. But,
Discussing those other issues in general, we got lost there for a bit. I'm sorry, and I'll tell you what, if we need to revisit this, maybe we can do it in part on another show. And I don't want to hold you up anymore. But, yeah, definitely. Go ahead. Let me just shut up, and let's see if we can get through as much of it as we can. But
okay, well, let me roll right through some of it then.
You got it.
If you look at the shoes, you can see that they are very pointed at the toe. You can also see that there's a separate heel on the shoe. Now, Beverly, when she does her symposiums and speeches, she carries around the shoes that she says she wore on the day of the assassination. And then she says there's the yellow paint on the sole of the shoe, which she said there was a curb that was freshly painted just before the motorcade, which I think that's probably true. And she said that there's yellow paint there. But the shoes that she presented are nothing like the shoes that you see in its photograph if you look at the detailed pictures, which probably she didn't have access to when back in '70 and when she started doing these speeches. If she saw this picture, I think she probably would have had maybe a different pair of shoes, or maybe it's the same pair of shoes with a new sole on them. I don't know. I mean, it's just something she'd have to explain to us. But the shoe has a separate heel. The front of the shoe at the toe is very pointed. However, the shoes that Beverly says that she wore that day, they have a wedge sole. I mean, it's continuous from the heel all the way to the toe. Quite different from the Babushka Lady shoes. That's another disparity worth visiting. Hopefully, it can be addressed by Beverly at some point.
Right, even the contour of the instep of the displayed shoes that she carries around and the apparent contour of the ones that the Babushka Lady figure is wearing differ. And this also, again, could be, like you said, maybe we're talking about resold shoes, but if we're talking about resold shoes, Fred, then what would be the relevance of the paint on the soles of the shoes be?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that also, because if you look at the paint, it looks like it was crudely applied. I mean, it doesn't look like what you would see if it was smudged on there by stepping on a curb. You would think there would be a more linear smudge, but it looks like a circular drop. There's a circular drop on each shoe. Mm. Also, the pattern, if you look at the pattern of the shoe, I don't know, did such patterns exist? Like the grip of the shoe, did they exist in '63? I don't know. I mean, maybe they did. But,
well, maybe they did, but the patterning of the paint is very fascinating for a couple of reasons. And here I'm going to kind of defend her a little bit. Depending on the way someone walks, believe it or not, we have to get into body mechanics, which was another part of that biometric study, by the way. Body mechanics tells you that people, they land on their feet a little bit differently. We've all heard the terms pigeon-toed and all that. Here's the thing. If she had gotten them completely covered and, covered an entire portion with a huge part of paint that was allegedly wet, which makes sense, there was some wet paint there that day because they had kind of spruced up the area a little bit, that's a possibility. But here's your problem. When you walk around, you're going to leave bits of it here and there, and you're going to leave in a regular pattern. The pattern that we see here on the shoes doesn't look like that to me. I mean, she had to have walked home unless she took them off and carried them home that day, but I've never heard that part of the story. So,
well, according to her statement, she put the shoes on. She was parked at I think a parking lot down on Commerce, and she put the shoes on there and then walked over to the to Dealey Plaza in those shoes. And at some point, I guess she stepped on the paint.
Yeah, but see, 100 steps afterwards changes the way the paint looks on the shoes. If she had stepped in the paint and taken her shoes right off, you have a completely different pattern. That's not present. And also the type of pattern that would emerge from somebody walking around and rubbing it off, as is bound to happen no matter how you step, okay, but would be more characteristic depending on if you walked more on the side of your foot, if you stepped quite flatly as you walk, or if you were a more heel-to-toe person. And some people even walk toe-to-heel, would change how that paint was scuffed and moved around, and that doesn't appear to be either case on what she walks around showing people. I'm just saying.
So that's three whole. I mean, you added. You brought up a very good another point about the problems that we have with the shoes. But this is something that maybe either she or Gary Shaw could explain. We would have to have them come forward and explain to us why the disparity.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a shoe, a wet shoe, and it looks like it belongs to that shoe, it doesn't look like it was resold to me, but I guess there's a possibility. And then you have another shoe that has a complete separate heel of a different color. That needs to be explained.
Right. Either that, or we need to understand that these weren't the shoes I wore that day, and it was a prop. Okay, I would even accept that.
I'm just trying to give her the benefit of the doubt.
Right, and I'm trying to do that as well. I mean, a mistake. You had yellow paint on them. You remembered there was wet paint. You thought they were the shoes. I'll go for it, I'll go for a reasonable mistake. But anyway, sorry.
Here's another point, though. I really have to address this one. This one's important to me because I have a passion about Gail Nick's I can't think of the word. Her desire to find her grandfather's missing film.
Oh yeah, her absolutely, and I agree with you there. I would love to see it emerge from whencever it would come. Yes.
Yes. Now, I don't believe there was anything at the knoll other than there are some people behind the fence that Lee Bauer saw and whatnot. I don't think there's any shooters over there or anything like that. However, if there's a question about it, and there's a film that could have captured it, and there's a film out there somewhere that has better detail, of course we should find it and see what's on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why I bring up the Knicks film is because during one of Beverly's symposiums, the name of the particular one is Jack Ruby Singer, and it's on YouTube. Hopefully it'll stay up there after we get done discussing it. But in that symposium, she presented a couple of frames which she said were given to her that a researcher was able to obtain from the United Press International, I believe, in New York. What's the guy's name? Timo McConan, she said.
Okay.
Talked to another guy, and the other guy told him what to do to get these frames. So supposedly, McConan went and got those frames, and she used those frames in her presentation. And if you look, I also added a collage or a side-by-side of two frames from the Knicks film, and Beverly said that the guy said that those were her frames. She left a little wiggle room when she gave the speech because she said she couldn't vouch for his veracity. But she was pretty much implicating that these are her frames. Now, I put a collage together, one showing the frame she presented in her presentation. Below it, I put the Knicks frame, which I believe matches her frame. The Knicks frame is, you can look it up. Anyone can do this if they want. They don't believe me. They think I'm pulling something. Look it up yourself. Look up Orville Knicks frame 061 and compare that to the frame Beverly posted in her symposium, Jack Ruby Singer. And if you put those two together, as I have, you will see that they look pretty much like the same frame. Now, the only difference, I think, would be there's probably a change in the contrast. One frame is maybe tilted. As you know, you might know, or for those who don't know, the Knicks frame The Nix film was taken at a slight angle, as Orville Nix was not even aware that he was filming at the time. He was not holding the camera properly. So there's a tilt to it. But in Beverly's frame, the tilt is corrected. But the problem is there's some lens glare that exists in both frames, and there's an impossibility to have two cameras capture the same exact perspective, same angle, same lens glare, and everything is exactly the same, except for, of course, the aspect ratio appears to be a little bit changed. The contrast appears to be a little bit changed. And there seems to be maybe some color changes or whatnot. But if you look at the frames together, you can clearly see that the frames are exactly the same. And you can make reference points. You can look at Jackie's pillbox hat and look at a reference point in the background. You can see the same thing in both frames. I don't think that would be a possibility if there were two separate frames. And it just is other aspects of these two frames that are just exactly alike. And I think that, to me, in my opinion, that would be an impossibility. And I think Beverly was using one of Orville Nix's frames. Are you still there?
Yes, I am. Sorry about that.
I thought I lost you for a second.
No, little trouble with my mute button, but I'm okay. I was saying while I was muted that I agree with you that that's exactly where that came from, and this is not the first time this has happened. Okay, now what am I talking about? Well, there is the Much More film, which is at a semi-similar angle to the Nix film when the angle is corrected. Because in the original Nix film, from the perspective of the viewer, the car appears to be going downhill. Okay?
Uphill.
Sorry, uphill. Excuse me. Because of the way he was standing, it was slanted as if that's the way it would come out. Okay?
Exactly.
That's been corrected by various people over the years. But if you look at an original that hasn't been touched or tampered with, or not an original, excuse me, wrong way to put it. If you look at an early generation, a legitimately early generation version of the Nix film, you'll see the car traveling uphill. Okay. So here's the thing. I have actually seen somebody else claim on Beverly's behalf, defending her, that they had obtained by some, mischievous way frames from her alleged film, and guess what they turned out to be when I did a comparison? Nothing more than blow-ups of the Much More film. Okay? Which was blown up and utilized, and this person even tried to say that they were published in the newspaper, but the fact is that frames from the Much More film were published within a few days of the assassination.
Right.
Okay? That's what happened. And they were in black and white, even though the Much More film is in color, because not too many newspapers had color sections of any kind at that point. And they were distributed widely because that film was obtained rather quickly, right? But the presenter tried to sell it to you as this is actually a frame of what it would have looked like. Now, what would have happened when she actually panned? And I'm looking at it and I'm going, I know by the perspective of the reflections on the car that are being somewhat muted in this version, that's the Much More film. And meanwhile, I'm visually impaired. I have bad eyesight. I can see this, but I watched a crowd of a couple dozen people being like awestruck with the idea, and it is an awe-inspiring idea. If this film were to suddenly emerge and it was one of those things that the government tried to suppress and somebody tried to hide it, and they probably would have killed her if she still had it, and very interesting, but doesn't pan out. There never has been any evidence of this film.
Well, Chuck,
okay?
I hope they did for the Much More film what they didn't do in this Nix film. Because if you look at it, where the Babushka Lady was standing, there would be no way she would be able to capture in her film the edge of the grass from which she was standing, because she was too close to the curb to capture that. The picture would be basically blown up in front of you, just like Mary Mormon's photo. Everything is big. You can't really see a whole lot because she's close to the limousine. And that's what the Babushka Lady's film should look like. There's no way you'd be able to see the grass where you're standing.
Right. Well, that was the attempt that was made with this, with this enlargement and cropping that was done of the much more frame. Okay, and it wasn't even a relevant much more frame. It was an irrelevant much more frame, which was, obviously easier to not have somebody like, to be able to cut Beverly or the Babushka Lady out of the picture. To them, it would be Beverly, but to cut the Babushka Lady out of the picture made it a lot easier if you took a less relevant frame. Like if you take a look at the choppy, much more film sometime, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's parts where she wouldn't be so terribly missed if you cut her out of the film. You know what I mean? If you cropped it. So that's what they were using.
I have to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's what
Chris
they were
was
using.
mentioning that there was a point where she used a film and she was in the film. So that would be quite ridiculous. If you're in your own film, I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, because this is long before the age of the selfie stick, right? So I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. But
and it would have been a pretty long selfie stick, maybe about 15 feet long.
Oh yeah, well, hey, look, what's a few feet among friends? But please.
Okay, let's go into the next portion, the next photo.
Yes.
All these materials, all these photos that we're talking about here, they are all in Dennis's video. I just want to make sure people know that.
Right, which I did already drop the link into the chat, and I'm going to drop it for you guys who are asking for it specifically in Skype. I'm going to give you that link right now, and I'm going to drop it back in the chat room one more time. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, there's another photo, a collage that Dennis did, which has pictures from I think two different photographers. There's the Jay Skaggs photographer and the William Allen. There might be another photographer. I'm not sure. I might need clarification on the first one, which shows the Babushka Lady, and directly on the other side of her, kind of blocked, you can see Gene Hill. I'm not entirely sure who the photographer is for that. It might be Jay Skaggs. But if you look at that collage...
Murray isn't involved in that in any way?
Could be.
Okay, I was just curious because
that might be a Murray photo.
Yeah, I'm
not sure.
I mixed the series up a little bit because I've been through so many of them and I haven't really brushed up on it in a while. But Murray is a possibility there. Not saying that it is.
Let me just describe to the listeners what we're looking at. There's a picture of the Babushka Lady. You can see most of her body. Next to that is a color picture of the actual Babushka being worn by the Babushka Lady. She's apparently holding the camera to her face. Next to that is the William Allen photo. It's a black and white photo. The purpose of this collage, the intent was to show that the Babushka appeared the same in both pictures. And the reason why we wanted to bring attention to that is because Beverly Oliver strongly denies that the purple Babushka was hers. She described the Babushka as a cream colored Babushka made of Chantilly lace.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the two photos, and you compare the two Babushkas, you can see different points that appear to match. Now we have six matches, and you can see the numbers there. But I think there are actually more if you examine it pretty closely. So if she's strongly denying that she's the one in the purple Babushka, well, what does that mean for the other one, where the Babushka is the same, the one where she claims that it is her? I mean, maybe she can explain. We need explanations. I mean, that we bring up these points so that we can get clarification on them.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're looking at the black and white photo, her head is turned to the side, and you said we'd mention or discuss the dark hair. But even beyond that, you can see a small portion of her face, the Babushka Lady's face. I don't believe that looks like Beverly Oliver. Now, that is inconclusive because, of course, you can only see a very little portion of her face, but it's just my own opinion. It does not look like her to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you what I have to say about that is that the jawbone unless she wants to claim that she had her jawbone altered, is completely inconsistent. I am not going to reveal the precise details there because I don't want to get them wrong. And to be honest with you, I was involved in that study, but it is not mine to publish. So I'll tell you what. When somebody does a biometric analysis and shows you these extremely different figures, you'll see what I'm talking about. And I have a feeling their book might actually come out this year. But
Oh, that would be great. Can you tell us the author? Because I'll be looking for that.
uh, I am not even supposed to discuss that. But when it drops, believe me, you'll know it because it's going to have a lot of photo analysis stuff in it, completely disproving things that I didn't even imagine could be disproved by photo analysis and by measurement and other data, which is actually contained in these older photographs that were made by a chemical process that people don't even understand are wholly different animals from digital photography. Okay,
Right.
so there's a whole explanation of that coming soon.
Okay, real quick before I think you want to get some callers probably. Uh, if you, were you finished? Because I was going to discuss the other allegation she made of not going up those stairs.
No, I absolutely want to get to all of those. Go right ahead. And if somebody does want to join in the discussion, the phone number is 718-717-8296, 718-717-8296. If you're on my Skype list and, you got bad phone reception, but you got better Skype reception, you can join in. And if you're not, Charles.Ochelli, find me. I'll accept you and I'll put you on. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, Beverly also made the claim that after the shooting, she stood and froze there for a minute or two, and then she walked across the street and joined a small little congregation of people that were over there discussing what happened. She strongly denied that she ever went up the knoll. However, if you look at the Bell film, Mark Bell, you can see Beverly Oliver right behind, just a few steps behind Gene Hill, going right up the knoll back into it seemed like they're going back into the rail yard. I think the Babushka Lady actually made it all the way up to the top of the stairs, if you look at the Bell film.
And just to say, the Bell film is something that's ignored by a lot of people, but yeah, I remember this detail. You're exactly correct. It appears to me as though you can definitely say she made it most of the way up those steps without any question. I'm not sure if she actually gets all the way to the top in my memory, but significantly up these steps, which are sort of just on there's a grassy slope, and then there's steps for somebody who's not accustomed to this. There's these steps, which are pretty flat and, or at least at the time had a certain dimension to them where you could take a couple of steps on each step, let's just say, and a lot of people went up those steps. It appears as though somebody wearing that very same babushka is also going up there with Gene Hill, who, is another witness who claims to have seen many things and is passed away now. But is definitely somebody that I'm, convinced, reasonably sure was absolutely there. Okay.
And you can see, it's by the time she gets to that point, it's pretty far away from the camera, but you can still see the diagonal indentation across the back, indicating that she's still wearing that strap with the bag on her left side. Mm-hmm. So it's the same person, and the raincoat is also, the color is also consistent, and it just looks the same. Who else would it be? I mean, who else was around there dressed exactly like that, who would have run just a few feet forward to get up those stairs? So that has to be the Babushka Lady going up those stairs.
Right. And I am now joined. I don't know. Do you want to identify yourself there, caller? Daisy? Hello? Alrighty. I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me. But, okay. Is that Trish? Trish? I thought it was Trish.
I think Trish was going to call. Hopefully that is her.
Yeah, I think it's her, but she might be, you might be muted or something, Trish, because I'm not hearing you. I don't know if you're hearing me, and you're on the air. If you can get your sound going. Okay, well, sorry. Maybe she'll straighten that out. I'll leave you on the line if you can figure out what's not letting me hear you. By all means, jump right on in. But no, these things are also inconsistencies that I would like to have examined and answered as well. You know, how can it possibly be that this very same, it appears to be the same babushka to me? You know, again, the Bell film is kind of bad quality and difficult, but how many people can you observe in any of the films that have this kind of headdress on, really? That aren't, oh, actually, there's clearly an older, much older woman that has one on in another part of the plaza at one point, but she's never been a person of interest. But I did
Well,
observe
there
that.
were actually several women were wearing babushkas at that time, but no one had that combination: the tan coat with the purplish babushka and a bag hanging on the left side.
Well, and not in that immediate vicinity either. There were in different parts of the place. There were some. But you know what? If you want to go to Main Street, right? There's a couple of them there at the time. There's one that's over by like on the other side of the book depository. Yeah. But there's an older woman that I've seen several times in several photographs who is clearly not the same babushka lady we're talking about.
Is that the one? Is that the one walking toward the knoll, and the photographer is facing to the south? And it's the same famous picture where they allege Howard Hunt.
Yes, yes, that's one of the pictures she's captured in, right? And she's
Yeah, that's clearly that's not the Babushka. I don't think that's the Babushka lady at all.
no, that's what I'm saying. It's clearly a woman with a scarf on her head, but not this particular babushka lady. You
Yeah,
know,
I agree with you, Chuck.
yeah, that's true. And there's a couple on Main Street. I can't really think of all of them, but I mean, the one comes up in a couple of different photographs and a couple of different films. But again, there's no way that you can correlate one to the other, outside of the fact that they're wearing a scarf on their heads.
Right.
So
There's still a few other. I didn't realize the time would go by so quickly. This is, when you're having fun, I guess the time will go by quicker. Uh,
yeah,
but there's another image showing the Babushka lady, and I just would like to open it for discussion at this point because I don't make any inference from it at this point because it's the first time I've ever seen it was a couple of days ago. It's a Wilma Bond image, and it shows the Babushka lady. You can see the Stemmons Freeway sign in the foreground, and then two more people in the image. But if you look to the right, you see the Babushka lady walking toward and I believe that's her because you can.
Oh boy, I have no idea why that just happened. But hey, such is live radio. Let me try and get Fred back. And then I was also fielding phone calls in between there while I was off the air. So let's see now if I can get Fred back. There we go.
Are you there, Chuck?
Yeah, I'm here. Something went very strange for a minute there, and I was about ready. I started taking other phone calls in between there, and I was suddenly off the air. You were gone, and I was trying to raise you back. Weird
Yeah,
stuff.
that was weird. I was like in the middle of just saying something, and when I got done, I looked to see what was, waiting for your response, and you didn't respond. And I'm like, hey, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, sorry about that. So go ahead and finish your point, and I'm sure we have another couple of callers that are going to try and get in now too. So go ahead and finish.
Okay, yeah, I was just talking about the Wilma Bond photo that I just recently discovered. I shouldn't say I discovered it because it's been on the Robin Unger's gallery. But first time I saw it, I thought it might be pretty nice to just maybe consider it and compare it to what Miss Oliver said she did after the assassination, because you see this person walking to the north toward the pergola. If you look at the picture, just to describe it, it shows the Simmons Freeway sign and a couple of other individuals, and it shows the Babushka Lady walking away or toward the pergola to the north. And I just thought it might be cool to bring that up. Just something to put in the back of your mind, let it swirl around, and consider what Beverly's claim was as to where she walked after it was all over with.
Well, right. I mean, it would be inconsistent with what she said, and it is an interesting photograph. And here's the problem with people that make a lot of claims about stuff in Dealey Plaza. When we have dispositive evidence of this, suddenly somebody's in a position that they couldn't have possibly been, or somebody would have to be in a position that they claim to have been in, and then we get a clear photograph. A lot of times it's from an incidental thing. A piece of a film where a camera sways quickly or whatever else often causes these kinds of things, and then you have another image that emerges. There's plenty of undiscovered sort of gems here regarding this case and the photographic evidence. As I've said, that not every single thing has been fully and adequately accounted for in the photographic record. I have area code 701 on the air. How you doing?
Hey, Chuck. It's great. This is Zach Gendro. How you doing?
Oh, hey. How you doing, Zach?
Hey, Zach, what's going on?
Good, Fred. Good. Great to hear you. I've been listening to the show. You guys are doing a fantastic job, and I just wanted to thank you guys for raising awareness of truth-seeking in this case. And, I just, marvelous to hear your guys' opinions, and you've both done a professional and awesome job tonight.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Zach.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just wanted to give my 2 bits of support and tell you guys to keep on charging with the fight. And Chuck, I wanted to also say thanks for having guests of both viewpoints on this case. It's really important to get that out there.
Well, right, because at the end of the day, I mean, look, no matter where you stand and what your hypothesis might be, I think it would serve us all well to get to the truth, and I would be more than happy to be wrong.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's only, it's okay to be wrong. It's just not right to, not admit it.
There you go, right?
Well,
I'm the first person to. I can
go
be
ahead,
swayed.
Fred,
I mean, I've switched positions. There's nothing that if there's something compelling and something that's groundbreaking that shows me there's a conspiracy, I'll switch right back. If it's evidentiary and provable, I'll switch right back. And I'm glad you called, Zach, because it's a point that you make. We're on both sides of the coin. Zach is a friend of mine. I consider him a friend. We've been collaborating and corresponding for maybe close to 2 years now. We don't particularly agree on everything. We have our arguments, but it's always in respect. We always come together and we can all share some research. So it's not always the case that you see all over these forums where people are griping and all bitter and those things, and calling names. People can come together even though they disagree and come together on some points, and I think we've done that very successfully tonight.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you, and I just wanted to tell the listeners and who may be not familiar with Fred, that Fred is one of the most respectful people out there in this community today, and he has had nothing but wise things to say every time that I've ever talked to him. So.
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely.
Zach. I really appreciate that.
And I thank you, Fred, for that, and I thank you, Zach, for calling. I got my most faithful listener on the line, Kimberly Ochelli.
Hey, I should know the
The
answer to this question, but I don't. You know how Judith Berry Baker's making all kinds of money claiming that she is who she is? What exactly is this woman getting, claiming that she's the babushka, if all the evidence is pointing to the fact that she's not, like the shoes that I saw the picture of and a few other things? Is she getting all kinds of money like Judy is?
Well, she wrote a book in 1994. I don't know how well that book is done. I know she collaborated with Oliver Stone for his film. I don't know what the compensation was for that. But I think some people, I mean, this is not very guaranteed to be her case, but some people, they just like the attention and the notoriety of being part of this event. And some people will inject themselves into this event just to get that notoriety, and they do it falsely.
Right. It's hard to know exactly what Beverly's financial gain is. Okay. It's hard to know if she gained financially. There are other people who claim to be witnesses that I think have been thoroughly debunked personally, who simply did just enjoy being a celebrity connected to this case. And it's very possible she's been compensated a lot. I mean, she's been around for many, many years, been on many television shows, been part of many.
Yeah, wasn't she on Geraldo?
Geraldo several times, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Well, maybe it is just because, she can say, oh, I was there too, But that Judith Berry Baker is making a fortune. And I think her story's crap.
Yeah, well, publicly, you can see the trail of some of what goes on with Baker, so we're not, pulling out of thin air. But the truth is that the gains that Beverly's ever made have not been publicly known. But, if you reconstruct the idea that whether she's a legitimate witness or not, she's been used as a consultant in various films, including the film JFK. There's a character based on her, which is a composite character, like many of them were in the film. But she's part of the most famous documentary series on the case that, for many, many years, which was The Men Who Killed Kennedy. She was a big part of that. All these different, like I say, television shows, radio interviews, appearances at conferences, books, signed photographs. I don't know exactly, but could she have gained financially from either being part of the case or being allegedly part of the case? Yes. Mm-hmm.
She's still alive?
Oh yeah, she's very much alive. She's I think she still does her speeches.
Interesting.
She was only 17 when it happened, so I think she would be. I don't know the math right now.
She's 68 or
close to 70.
She's like 68 or possibly 69. Yeah.
A 17-year-old was dressed like that back then?
Well, yeah, there's more to it, right? Also, the color of the hair, like you said, is dark. She claims that she was wearing a wig because she's a blonde, and the Babushka Lady obviously has dark hair. She claimed that she was wearing sunglasses and this big overcoat to hide herself and all of this kind of thing. Plus, it was raining that day, which it was earlier in the day, and a lot of people had raincoats on, so okay. But, yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, hiding yourself from what? If you're just there to see the president go by in his motorcade, who are you hiding from?
Well, who knows? Maybe she had some version of 1960 stalkers. After all, she was a nightclub singer. And, well, anyway.
Oh, it is deeper. Well, I'll have to ask you more later.
Yeah, listen. If you want to, we're gonna watch this Dennis Morissette video. I mean, Dennis Morissette. That's we're gonna watch Dennis's video. Okay,
And
and
I'm glad to see that you're interested, and I hope that there's other listeners who have the interest you have, and will.
Well, I live with a man. I've been forced to have an interest. Right, hon?
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding.
It
is
I was get a twinkle in my parents' eye when this event occurred.
See, and I wasn't even a twinkle yet, so it's okay.
Right. We were in the backbone of our daddies.
Somewhere, yes. My daddy had not even yet been to Vietnam, so 1963. Yeah, my father.
Really quick here, while we have a few minutes left, there's another important feature about one of the William Allen photos, the same black and white photo we discussed before, but if you look at the portion which shows the Babushka Lady, and then there's two cameras that have been inserted in this image that Dennis put together. It compares the Babushka Lady's camera to a box still picture camera, which we believe the Babushka Lady had, was a box still picture camera. You can very well see the box shape of the camera. And there's also a Yashica movie camera displayed there, too, for comparison. I don't believe it looks anything like the Yashica camera.
And the reason why you have to compare it to the Yashica camera is because that is what she has consistently insisted she had. In fact, she used to describe it as a very experimental and rare camera that a friend had acquired for her from Japan.
I don't know how he acquired it. She only explains that he brought it back with her as a gift. Now, he worked for Kodak. He worked at the Six Flags at a Kodak kiosk or something like that.
Oh, yeah, but the country of origin for the camera would have only been Japan at that point. According to her story, you couldn't get it in America. It had to be specially brought to her. Which
brings up the question, how would he acquire an experimental camera from Japan? We're talking Japanese technology. Would they really want their technology, their new camera out there? I find that very unreasonable. I don't know how he would be able to acquire such a camera. I have a problem with that.
You're looking at a kiosk. I mean,
yeah, well, but that's long before. Yeah, that's long before this. And here's the deal with that. Actually, I will, again, put in a little point of defense, but, it still falls apart, even my little point of defense for. Many military men who have been stationed overseas have brought things back that were not supposed to be imported into this country. That happens. Okay. But then we have the question being begged, why is it that the 17-year-old girl ends up with it? And all of this, and was it really an experimental camera at the time? And it takes you down a whole other rabbit hole. Okay, where, again, the story begins to collapse. So...
Well, when the claim was first made, it wasn't an experimental camera. It became one when someone did the research on the camera and found that it did not even exist in 1963.
Right.
At that point, it became the experimental camera that was released before its time.
That is what happened when she was doing those appearances on Geraldo, I'm pretty sure. That's what.
So if people are calling her bullshit, then why does it continue to happen? That's what I don't understand.
Well, see, and here's the thing, and another bad sign, and I'm just going to throw this out there for the listeners' consideration. Another very bad sign for me with her in recent years is her presence at the grave party for Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay, that party, remember I told you about this, Kim, where they had balloons and all this other stuff?
Is that the one Tosh Plumlee attended?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah, I saw
That's just weird.
That's
I can see the Jim Morrison grave, but my God.
Well,
you're over there at your so-called whatever he was to her, and you're having a party. That's just disrespectful.
Yeah, the absolute love of my life, even 50 years later, I don't believe that I would bring balloons and cake and a party atmosphere to his gravesite. But that's just me, and of course, roping in anybody who could be remotely connected to the conspiracy industry as best you can and bringing them along, it doesn't sit right with me.
Would she just send out invitations that she had printed up, or what? I mean,
well, I don't know.
How
honey.
do people know about attending such a party?
Well, honey, I have no idea because I promise you that I was not on that guest list. So.
I think.
There's a whole set of people, a whole group who correspond. I actually had the opportunity to go to one of the symposiums where Tosh Plumley was. Beverly also spoke. Let me see who else. Tosh Plumley, Beverly Oliver. The only person that I was there who I believe was Gail. She also spoke, Gail Nix Jackson. I can't think of who else was there. Oh, Sherry Feaster was also there. She spoke.
Mm-hmm.
But, they share the information about, the events that they're going to do. Like during the anniversaries, they'll meet at a certain place in Dilley Plaza, or they'll meet here or there. They have it all arranged, and they speak to each other, and they plan these events.
Right. And
we only got a couple minutes left.
Right. We only got like 2 minutes left, so I'm going to let you go, Kim.
All right.
Thanks for calling in and listening, hon. At least I know I got one listener. Thank you.
I always listen. All right. I'll see you later.
All right.
Bye.
So,
Chuck, if I might plug two researchers that I got a lot of my material, my information from, there's a Mark K. Colgan who did some very excellent work on Jada.
Whoa! Say Mark's name again because it kind of broke off.
Mark K. K as in King. Colgan. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's Colgan. If you do a search on his name, it'll come up. He did some excellent work on Jada, who Beverly says was at the Colony Club or the Carousel Club right before the assassination, which we don't believe to be correct because even Jada herself said on TV that she separated and made kind of had a falling out with Jack Ruby and went her separate way. Mm-hmm. So he did some really excellent work on that. And then there's also David. Now I don't want to screw up his name. This thing I'm afraid of that I do all the time. Rietz?
Dave Rietz, yeah.
Rietz, okay, yes. He did some excellent work on the Babushka Lady too. You can look up his name and see what he's done. He has a column where he shows the claim, and then a evaluation column where it shows the answer to the claim that's made by Beverly. He did some really excellent work there. So I just wanted to plug those two guys in. And then Dennis Morissette, watch his video. He's done some excellent work on this too. I collaborated with him on this video. I'm very proud of it. And it raises many questions, and I encourage anybody to check it out.
Well, absolutely, Fred, and I want to thank you for joining me tonight because we are going to run out of time. My bumper's going to kick right on in, and that'll be the end of it. And once we go off air, I will talk to you a little bit more. But I do appreciate anybody who decided to take the time to listen to the Ochelli Effect tonight. This will be posted up on the Blind JFK Researcher channel after a bit, too. So it'll be out there. You guys will be able to consider all of this for yourselves. I do advise you to take a look at the photographs that we have described. If you need them, contact me if you can find a way to do it. If you're not already in the Ochelli Effect radio show discussion group, and I will gladly pass.
Stars,